The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain as Captain Maria Santos crouched behind a makeshift barrier, watching her team of military snipers struggle with their assignments. For 3 weeks, they had been positioned in this remote outpost, tasked with eliminating high-value targets that threatened civilian evacuation routes. The enemy had been moving supplies and reinforcements through a narrow mountain pass, and headquarters needed those supply lines cut. Maria wiped sweat from her brow as she observed Sergeant Jackson, one of her most experienced marksmen, miss his fourth shot of the morning. The target, an enemy communications specialist, ducked behind cover and disappeared into the maze of rocks below. Jackson cursed under his breath and adjusted his scope for the 5th time that hour. "Range is too inconsistent," Jackson muttered, his frustration evident. "Wind patterns keep shifting every few minutes. These older rifles just can't compensate fast enough." The team had been equipped with standard military sniper rifles, weapons that served well in most conditions. But this particular terrain presented unique challenges. The altitude affected bullet trajectory in unexpected ways, and the mountain winds created unpredictable air currents that sent even the most carefully aimed shots off target. Private Chun, positioned 50 meters to Maria's left, had similar problems. She was an excellent shot under normal circumstances, but the combination of equipment limitations and environmental factors had reduced her usual accuracy to barely 60%. For a sniper team, those numbers were unacceptable. Maria studied the battlefield through her binoculars, noting the enemy positions they needed to neutralize. Intelligence reports indicated that a major supply convoy would pass through the area within 48 hours. If her team couldn't establish effective overwatch and eliminate key personnel, civilian evacuees would face significant danger. The enemy had positioned themselves strategically, knowing the challenging shooting conditions would work in their favor. They moved with confidence, believing themselves relatively safe from long-range engagement. Several targets presented themselves briefly throughout the morning, but each opportunity was missed due to equipment limitations or environmental factors. "Captain," called Corporal Williams from his position, "I had a clear shot on that spotter, but my round dropped at least 2 feet low. Something's not right with these calculations." Maria knew her team's frustration was justified. These were skilled professionals who rarely missed under normal circumstances. The problem wasn't their ability. It was the combination of environmental conditions and equipment limitations that created an almost impossible shooting scenario. She remembered her grandfather's stories about World War II snipers who achieved incredible results with basic equipment. But those situations were different. They operated in familiar terrain with predictable conditions. This mountain environment created variables that their standard gear couldn't handle effectively. As the morning progressed, Maria counted 7 missed opportunities. Each failed shot allowed enemy personnel to complete their tasks and move to safer positions. The psychological impact on her team was becoming evident. Confident snipers were second-guessing themselves, over-adjusting their scopes, and losing the mental clarity necessary for precision shooting. During a brief lull in activity, Maria gathered her team for assessment. Jackson spread his shooting log on a flat rock, showing the pattern of misses that defied normal explanation. Chin pointed out wind readings that changed dramatically within minutes, making consistent holdover calculations nearly impossible. "It's like the mountains are working against us," Chin observed. "Every time we adjust for one variable, 2 others change." Maria studied the data her team had collected. The enemy supply routes remained active, and intelligence indicated increased activity over the next 24 hours. Time was running out, and traditional approaches weren't working. That afternoon, she made a decision that would change everything. While conducting reconnaissance of nearby abandoned military positions, Maria discovered an old storage bunker that had been used during previous conflicts. Inside, covered in dust and wrapped in protective cloth, she found something unexpected. The rifle was clearly old, possibly dating back several decades, but it appeared well-maintained. Its wooden stock showed wear from extensive use, and the metal components had developed a patina that spoke of countless hours in the field. Unlike the modern scopes her team used, this weapon featured simple iron sights and basic mechanical components. Maria lifted the rifle carefully, feeling its weight and balance. Everything about the weapon felt solid and purposeful, designed for reliability rather than advanced technology. She found ammunition that appeared compatible, though she would need to test-fire the weapon before considering it for operational use. The discovery presented an interesting possibility. While her team struggled with modern equipment that couldn't adapt to local conditions, this older rifle might offer advantages. Its simpler design meant fewer variables to consider, and experienced snipers often achieved remarkable results with basic tools when they understood their limitations and capabilities. That evening, as her team cleaned their weapons and reviewed the day's disappointing results, Maria studied the old rifle more carefully. She noticed modifications that suggested previous users had adapted it for local conditions. The sight adjustments showed where patterns indicating extensive use, and small scratches on the stock might represent a previous owner's method of recording successful engagements. The weight distribution felt different from modern rifles, requiring different handling techniques. The trigger mechanism responded smoothly, suggesting recent maintenance despite the weapon's apparent age. Most importantly, the rifle's simple design meant that environmental factors would affect it predictably, allowing an experienced shooter to compensate through technique rather than technology. Maria decided to test the weapon the following morning, but first she needed to understand its capabilities and limitations. She spent the evening studying its mechanical components, learning how previous users had modified it for optimal performance in mountain conditions. As night fell over the outpost, Maria cleaned the old rifle thoroughly, preparing it for what might become a crucial test. Her team's modern equipment had failed to meet mission requirements, but perhaps older methods would prove more effective. Tomorrow would determine whether this discovery could change their tactical situation. The stars appeared bright and clear in the mountain air as Maria made her plans. If the old rifle performed as she hoped, it might provide the solution her team desperately needed. The enemy supply convoy was approaching, and time was running out for finding an effective response to the current tactical challenges. Dawn broke across the mountain peaks as Maria carried the old rifle to a secluded testing area, away from her team's primary positions. She had chosen a location that offered clear sight lines to various distances, allowing her to understand the weapon's capabilities without exposing their position to enemy observation. The morning air was crisp and still, providing ideal conditions for initial testing. Maria set up makeshift targets at ranges from 200 to 800 meters, using pieces of equipment and natural landmarks to gauge the rifle's accuracy and bullet drop characteristics. Loading the first round, Maria noticed how different the weapon felt compared to modern equipment. The bolt action required more deliberate movement, and the iron sights demanded greater focus and precision than optical scopes. Everything about the rifle encouraged slower, more methodical shooting techniques. Her first shot struck a target at 300 meters, slightly left of center, but impressively close considering she was learning the weapon's characteristics. The sound was different too, sharper, and more immediate than the suppressed weapons her team typically used. Maria adjusted her aim based on that first shot's impact and fired again. The second round struck much closer to her intended point of impact. The rifle was responding to her adjustments in predictable ways, unlike the inconsistent results her team experienced with their standard equipment. As she continued testing, a pattern emerged. The old rifle's simpler design made it more consistent in these mountain conditions. While modern weapons relied on complex systems that environmental factors could disrupt, this rifle responded directly to the shooter's skill and understanding. After an hour of testing, Maria felt confident enough to attempt longer-range engagements. She identified a distinctive rock formation at approximately 600 meters and prepared for a more challenging shot. The wind was beginning to pick up, creating the same conditions that had frustrated her team the previous day. Rather than fighting the environmental factors, Maria observed them carefully and timed her shot for a brief lull in the wind. The bullet struck the target rock with a satisfying impact, confirming that the rifle could achieve the precision necessary for operational use. During her testing session, Maria noticed movement in the valley below. Enemy personnel were conducting routine patrols, unaware of her elevated position. She studied their patterns through binoculars, noting potential targets that would become available if she chose to engage. One figure caught her attention, an enemy officer directing supply operations near a makeshift command post. Intelligence reports had identified similar personnel as high-value targets whose elimination would significantly disrupt enemy logistics. Maria considered her options. She could return to her team and report the rifle's capabilities, or she could attempt to engage targets immediately and demonstrate its effectiveness. The distance was challenging, approximately 700 meters with variable wind conditions, but within the weapon's proven capabilities. She decided to take the shot. The enemy officer presented a clear target for several seconds while inspecting supply vehicles. Maria controlled her breathing, aligned the iron sights carefully, and squeezed the trigger during a moment of wind calm. The shot was perfect. The target dropped immediately, and Maria observed through binoculars as enemy personnel scrambled for cover, unsure of the shooter's location. Their confusion provided additional opportunities, but Maria held fire to avoid revealing her position. That first successful engagement changed everything. The old rifle had achieved what her team's modern equipment couldn't: a clean, precise shot under challenging conditions. Maria felt the confidence that comes from understanding her weapon's capabilities and limitations. She spent the remainder of the morning identifying additional targets and planning engagement sequences. The enemy's routine activities provided multiple opportunities for tactical advantage if she could position herself effectively and time her shots properly. Around midday, Maria returned to her team's position with the old rifle. Jackson and Chen were preparing for another frustrating session with their standard equipment, adjusting scopes and checking calculations that had failed them repeatedly. "Try something different," Maria announced, displaying the old rifle. Sometimes older methods work better than new technology. Her team examined the weapon with curiosity and some skepticism. Williams pointed out the lack of modern sighting systems, while Chen questioned whether iron sights could provide sufficient accuracy for their mission requirements. "This morning, I dropped a target at 700 meters, Maria explained. "Clean shot, no missed opportunities." The rifle performs consistently because it doesn't rely on complex systems that these conditions can disrupt. Jackson studied the weapon more carefully, noting its mechanical simplicity and solid construction. As an experienced marksman, he recognized quality craftsmanship despite the rifle's apparent age. The wear patterns suggested extensive successful use by previous operators. "The environmental conditions that are giving us problems actually work in favor of simpler equipment," Maria continued. "This rifle responds predictably to technique and experience, rather than depending on technology that can malfunction or provide inconsistent readings." She demonstrated the rifle's loading mechanism and sight alignment, showing her team how different techniques were necessary, but not difficult to master. The weapon required more deliberate shooting methods, but those methods actually improved overall accuracy by forcing better fundamentals. Chen volunteered to test the rifle next, having grown frustrated with her standard weapon's inconsistent performance. Maria guided her through the basic operation and sight picture, emphasizing the different timing and breathing techniques that the iron sights required. Chen's first shot with the old rifle struck closer to her intended target than any shot she had made with modern equipment over the past 3 days. Her second shot was even better, and by the fourth round she was achieving the precision that had made her reputation as an excellent marksman. "It feels more connected," Chen observed. "Like I'm actually controlling the shot instead of hoping the technology works correctly." Williams and Jackson took turns with the rifle, each discovering that their fundamental shooting skills translated well to the simpler weapon. The lack of complex systems actually allowed them to focus on marksmanship basics that modern equipment sometimes obscured. As afternoon approached, Maria's team had a decision to make. They could continue struggling with equipment that wasn't suited to local conditions, or they could adapt their tactics to take advantage of what was actually working. The intelligence reports became more urgent as the day progressed. Enemy supply operations were increasing, and the expected convoy would arrive within 24 hours. Mission success depended on their ability to establish effective overwatch and eliminate key personnel who were coordinating logistics operations. Maria studied the tactical situation through binoculars, identifying positions where the old rifle could be most effective. The enemy had grown confident due to the previous day's missed shots, moving more openly and presenting better targets. "We need to change our approach," Maria announced to her team. "Instead of fighting conditions that favor simpler equipment, we adapt our tactics to take advantage of what actually works." The plan she proposed was straightforward but required precise execution. Using the old rifle's demonstrated capabilities, they would establish overwatch positions that maximized effectiveness while minimizing exposure to enemy counter-sniper operations. As evening approached, Maria prepared for what would become a defining moment in her military career. The old rifle had proven its capabilities during testing, but operational success would require perfect execution under pressure. Tomorrow would determine whether her tactical adaptation could achieve mission objectives that seemed impossible just hours earlier. The pre-dawn hours brought unusual clarity to the mountain air, creating perfect visibility across the valley where enemy forces had established their supply coordination center. Maria positioned herself in a carefully selected overwatch point, the old rifle steady against a natural rock rest she had prepared during the night. Through binoculars, she observed enemy personnel beginning their daily routines. Intelligence reports had provided detailed information about key individuals whose elimination would significantly disrupt the incoming supply convoy. These weren't random targets. Each person played a crucial role in coordinating logistics that supported enemy operations. Maria's first target appeared at 0547 hours, exactly as intelligence had predicted. A senior logistics coordinator emerged from the command tent, carrying communication equipment and supply manifests. The range was 640 meters, well within the old rifle's proven capabilities. The morning wind patterns were predictable, flowing down the mountain face in steady currents that Maria could compensate for using the techniques she had developed during testing. She aligned the iron sights carefully, controlled her breathing, and waited for the optimal moment. The shot was perfect. The target dropped immediately, and Maria observed enemy personnel scrambling to understand what had happened. Their confusion provided a tactical advantage, as they hadn't yet identified the shooter's position or realized they were under precision fire. Within minutes, a second target presented itself. An enemy communications specialist was attempting to establish contact with higher headquarters, unaware that his colleague had been eliminated. Maria had a clear shot at 720 meters, a challenging distance that required careful calculation of bullet drop and wind drift. She adjusted her aim point slightly, accounting for the increased range and crosswind component. The shot struck exactly where intended, eliminating another key person in the enemy's logistics chain. The precision of two consecutive long-range engagements began creating panic among enemy forces. Maria observed through binoculars as enemy personnel sought cover and attempted to locate the source of sniper fire. Their movements were disorganized and reactive, indicating they hadn't anticipated precision engagement from such distances. The psychological impact of accurate long-range fire was already disrupting their operations. Her third opportunity came when an enemy officer emerged to coordinate counter-sniper measures. He was directing personnel to establish security positions, making him a high-value target whose elimination would further degrade their defensive capabilities. The range was 580 meters, with a slight uphill angle that required minor trajectory adjustment. Maria took her time with this shot, knowing that enemy forces were now actively searching for her position. She waited for the target to pause long enough for a clean engagement, then fired during a moment when mountain shadows concealed her muzzle flash. The third target fell as cleanly as the first two. Maria had now eliminated 3 key personnel within 30 minutes, achieving the kind of precision that had seemed impossible when her team used standard equipment. The old rifle was performing flawlessly, responding to her technique and experience in ways that modern weapons couldn't match in these conditions. As morning progressed, enemy activity increased as they attempted to maintain operations despite losing key personnel. Maria identified additional targets, but she also noticed enemy forces beginning to implement counter-sniper procedures. They were using concealment more effectively and limiting individual exposure times. Her fourth engagement required patience and tactical thinking. An enemy supply coordinator was directing vehicle movements from a partially concealed position, presenting only brief opportunities for engagement. Maria studied his movement patterns, identifying a moment when he would need to expose himself to coordinate with arriving transport. When the opportunity came, Maria was ready. The shot was taken at maximum effective range, approximately 800 meters, with challenging wind conditions that required precise compensation. The bullet struck perfectly, eliminating another critical link in the enemy's logistics chain. The psychological impact of 4 consecutive precision shots was devastating to enemy morale. Through binoculars, Maria observed personnel abandoning exposed positions and seeking better concealment. Their operational efficiency was declining rapidly as key coordinators were eliminated and remaining personnel focused on survival rather than mission accomplishment. Enemy forces began implementing more sophisticated counter-sniper measures, using smoke screens and indirect movement techniques to limit exposure. However, their efforts were reactive rather than proactive, indicating they still hadn't located Maria's firing position or understood the full scope of the threat they faced. Around 0800 hours, Maria observed enemy reinforcements arriving to replace eliminated personnel. New targets presented themselves, but she recognized the need for tactical patience. Engaging too frequently might reveal her position and compromise future opportunities. Her fifth shot came when a replacement logistics coordinator attempted to re-establish communication networks. The target was moving between covered positions, but Maria anticipated his route and positioned her aim point accordingly. When he emerged from concealment, she was ready with a perfectly timed shot at 650 meters. The elimination of 5 key personnel within 3 hours had created significant disruption in enemy operations. Supply vehicles were arriving without proper coordination, communication networks were failing, and remaining personnel were focused on counter-sniper measures rather than mission accomplishment. Maria's success with the old rifle was proving that tactical adaptation could overcome equipment limitations. While her team had struggled with modern weapons that couldn't handle local conditions effectively, she had achieved perfect precision using simpler but more reliable tools. During a tactical pause, Maria studied the battlefield situation through binoculars. Enemy forces were regrouping and implementing new security measures, but their logistics operations remained severely degraded. The incoming supply convoy would face significant challenges if key coordination personnel remained eliminated. Her sixth engagement opportunity came when enemy forces attempted to re-establish their communication center. A senior technician was installing replacement equipment, working in what he believed was a secure location. Maria had a clear shot at 700 meters, requiring careful adjustment for wind drift and bullet drop. She took her time with the shot, knowing that enemy counter-sniper efforts were intensifying. The target was eliminated cleanly, further degrading their communication capabilities and adding to the psychological pressure on remaining personnel. As the morning continued, Maria maintained careful observation of enemy activities while planning additional engagements. The old rifle had exceeded all expectations, providing the precision and reliability necessary for successful operations under challenging conditions. Enemy forces were adapting to the sniper threat, but their adaptations were defensive and reactive. They were spending significant resources on security measures rather than mission accomplishment, exactly the kind of tactical disruption that precision sniper fire was designed to achieve. Maria prepared for continued operations, knowing that the most critical period would come when the supply convoy attempted to transit through the area. Her successful engagements had already created significant tactical advantages, but maintaining pressure on enemy logistics would be essential for overall mission success. The old rifle had proven its worth through 7 consecutive precision shots under conditions that defeated modern equipment. Maria's tactical adaptation was succeeding beyond expectations, demonstrating that sometimes older methods provided better solutions than advanced technology. The afternoon brought increased enemy activity as supply vehicles began arriving ahead of the main convoy, but their operations remained chaotic due to the elimination of key coordination personnel. Maria observed through binoculars as replacement officers attempted to re-establish control, providing new targets that could further degrade enemy capabilities. Her 8th shot came when an enemy commander emerged to personally direct security operations. He was clearly frustrated with his subordinates' inability to locate the sniper position, and his visible leadership made him a priority target. The range was 730 meters, with challenging wind conditions that had strengthened throughout the morning. Maria compensated for the crosswind and elevated position, adjusting her aim point based on hours of experience with the old rifle's ballistic characteristics. The shot struck perfectly, eliminating a senior officer whose loss would create significant command and control problems. The psychological impact of losing another leader was immediately visible. Enemy personnel became more cautious, spending excessive time in covered positions and hesitating before moving between locations. Their operational tempo decreased significantly, creating exactly the kind of tactical disruption that precision sniper fire was designed to achieve. Within an hour, Maria had identified 3 additional targets among replacement personnel who were attempting to restore communication networks. Each engagement required careful timing and precise shooting, as enemy forces were now implementing sophisticated counter-sniper measures. Her 9th shot eliminated a communications specialist working to establish contact with the incoming convoy. The target was partially concealed, requiring Maria to wait for the optimal moment when he exposed enough of himself to present a viable shot. Her patience was rewarded with another clean elimination at 620 meters. The 10th engagement came when enemy forces attempted to establish a forward observation post to locate Maria's position. The observer was using optical equipment to scan potential sniper locations, making him a threat that required immediate elimination. Maria fired during a moment when mountain shadows concealed her position, achieving another perfect shot at 810 meters. Enemy counter-sniper efforts were intensifying, but they remained ineffective because Maria's position was well concealed and she varied her shooting patterns to avoid detection. The old rifle's iron sights actually provided advantages in this situation, as they produced no optical glint that modern scopes might create. As afternoon progressed, Maria observed the arrival of additional enemy reinforcements, including specialized personnel trained in counter-sniper operations. However, these specialists were working with incomplete information, as surviving enemy forces couldn't provide accurate details about the sniper's position or capabilities. Her 11th shot targeted a counter-sniper specialist who was attempting to establish an overwatch position. The elimination of this threat was crucial for maintaining tactical advantage, as experienced counter-snipers could potentially identify Maria's location and direct effective suppressive fire. The shot was taken at maximum effective range, approximately 850 meters, requiring precise calculation of ballistic factors and environmental conditions. Maria's growing familiarity with the old rifle allowed her to make accurate compensations, and the target was eliminated cleanly. Enemy forces were beginning to understand the scope of the threat they faced, but their response remained reactive and ineffective. They were dedicating significant resources to security measures that weren't protecting key personnel, while mission-critical operations suffered from lack of proper coordination. Maria's 12th engagement eliminated another replacement logistics coordinator who was attempting to prepare for the convoy's arrival. The precision of consecutive long-range shots was creating a climate of fear among enemy personnel as they realized that no position offered complete safety from sniper fire. During a brief tactical pause, Maria assessed the battlefield situation through binoculars. Enemy operations were severely degraded, with personnel reluctant to expose themselves for the time necessary to complete complex tasks. Communication networks remained disrupted, and coordination between different enemy units was breaking down. The afternoon brought news through her radio that the enemy supply convoy was approaching ahead of schedule, creating urgency for continued operations. Maria identified several critical targets whose elimination would maximize disruption when the convoy attempted to transit through the area. Her 13th shot targeted an enemy officer who was coordinating air reconnaissance efforts designed to locate sniper positions. The elimination of this threat was essential for maintaining concealment, as aerial observation could potentially compromise Maria's carefully selected position. The 14th engagement came when enemy forces attempted to establish a casualty collection point for personnel who had been eliminated. Maria recognized that allowing enemy forces to organize medical operations could restore their confidence and operational effectiveness. She fired on the medical coordinator at 700 meters, achieving another clean elimination that forced enemy forces to abandon organized casualty collection efforts. The psychological impact was significant, as surviving personnel realized that even humanitarian operations weren't safe from sniper fire. Enemy forces attempted to use smoke screens to conceal their movements, but Maria had anticipated this tactic and positioned herself to maintain observation through gaps in their concealment. Her 15th shot eliminated a target who believed himself protected by artificial concealment, demonstrating that tactical countermeasures weren't providing the security enemy forces expected. As evening approached, Maria had achieved a level of tactical success that seemed impossible when the mission began. 15 consecutive precision shots had eliminated key personnel and created massive disruption in enemy operations, all achieved with an old rifle that her team had initially dismissed as obsolete. The enemy supply convoy was now approaching an area where coordination and communication had been severely degraded. Vehicle movements would be uncoordinated, security measures would be inadequate, and surviving personnel would be focused on avoiding sniper fire rather than accomplishing mission objectives. Maria prepared for the most critical phase of operations, knowing that the convoy's arrival would present both opportunities and challenges. Enemy forces would likely concentrate their remaining capabilities to protect the supplies, but they would do so without effective leadership and communication. Her success with the old rifle had demonstrated that tactical adaptation and marksmanship fundamentals could achieve results that advanced technology couldn't match under specific conditions. The weapon's simplicity and reliability had provided consistent performance when modern equipment failed to meet operational requirements. Through binoculars, Maria observed enemy forces continuing their ineffective security measures while attempting to prepare for the convoy's arrival. Their efforts were disorganized and reactive, lacking the coordination that effective leadership would provide. The psychological impact of sustained sniper operations was evident in enemy behavior patterns. Personnel were reluctant to expose themselves, communications were hesitant and incomplete, and decision-making was delayed by concerns about individual safety rather than mission accomplishment. Maria had achieved tactical dominance through precision shooting and careful target selection, creating conditions that would maximize the impact of continued operations when the supply convoy entered the engagement area. The old rifle had proven that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. The enemy supply convoy appeared on the mountain road, just as evening shadows began lengthening across the valley, presenting Maria with the culminating opportunity of her remarkable day. Through binoculars, she counted 12 vehicles moving in tactical formation, protected by security elements that should have been coordinated by the personnel she had systematically eliminated throughout the day. The convoy's approach revealed the full impact of her previous engagements. Vehicle spacing was irregular, communication between elements appeared minimal, and security procedures were obviously improvised rather than properly coordinated. The elimination of key logistics personnel had created exactly the kind of operational chaos that would maximize vulnerability to continued precision fire. Maria's 16th shot targeted the convoy's lead security vehicle commander, who was exposing himself to observe the route ahead. His elimination at 800 meters created immediate confusion in the convoy's formation, as subordinate personnel lacked clear guidance for responding to contact. The psychological impact of sniper fire on a moving convoy was devastating. Drivers began taking evasive action without coordination, causing vehicles to bunch up in some areas while creating dangerous gaps in others. The disciplined, tactical formation deteriorated rapidly as individual survival instincts overcame unit cohesion. Her 17th engagement eliminated a communications specialist who was attempting to coordinate with higher headquarters for assistance. The shot was taken while the convoy was moving, requiring Maria to lead the target and compensate for vehicle movement in addition to range and wind considerations. Her growing expertise with the old rifle made this complex shot achievable. Enemy forces attempted to establish security positions around the stalled convoy, but their efforts were hampered by lack of effective leadership and communication. Maria identified multiple targets among personnel attempting to organize defensive measures, each elimination further degrading their ability to protect the valuable supplies. The 18th shot targeted an officer attempting to restore convoy movement through direct leadership. Maria observed him moving between vehicles, trying to coordinate drivers and security elements through personal contact rather than radio communication. His elimination at 750 meters removed another source of potential organization. Convoy security was breaking down completely as personnel abandoned vehicles and sought individual concealment rather than maintaining protective formations. The supplies they were meant to protect became secondary considerations as survival instincts took precedence over mission accomplishment. Maria's 19th engagement eliminated a senior non-commissioned officer who was attempting to establish a casualty collection point near the convoy. The precision of this shot, taken at maximum effective range during challenging lighting conditions, demonstrated the remarkable capabilities she had developed with the old rifle. As darkness began falling, Maria switched to engaging targets based on their equipment signatures and movement patterns rather than detailed visual identification. Her 20th shot eliminated a figure attempting to operate communication equipment, further isolating the convoy from potential assistance. Enemy forces were now completely focused on survival rather than mission accomplishment. The convoy's valuable supplies sat unprotected while personnel sought concealment in terrain that offered limited security from precision fire. Communication with higher headquarters had been completely severed, leaving survivors without guidance or support. Maria's 21st engagement targeted personnel attempting to establish perimeter security around abandoned vehicles. The shot was taken during the transition from daylight to darkness, requiring her to use techniques she had never practiced but which felt natural with the old rifle's familiar handling characteristics. The psychological impact of sustained precision fire over 12 hours had completely broken enemy unit cohesion. Individual personnel were making survival decisions without reference to unit objectives or command guidance. The carefully planned supply operation had become a humanitarian crisis for enemy forces. Her 22nd shot eliminated a figure attempting to signal for assistance using visual methods. Maria recognized that preventing enemy forces from communicating their situation was essential for maintaining tactical advantage and ensuring mission success. Throughout the evening, Maria continued identifying targets among enemy personnel, attempting various survival and mission continuation activities. Each engagement required careful consideration of tactical necessity, ammunition conservation, and risk assessment for her own position. The 23rd engagement eliminated personnel attempting to recover supplies from abandoned vehicles. Maria recognized that preventing enemy forces from salvaging mission-critical materials was as important as the initial disruption of convoy operations. Her 24th shot targeted a figure attempting to establish an observation post to locate the sniper position. Counter-sniper operations remained a threat even as overall enemy capabilities degraded, making elimination of such attempts essential for continued operations. As full darkness approached, Maria prepared for her final engagements of the day. Enemy activity was decreasing as personnel sought concealment and abandoned organized activities, but several targets remained that could impact overall mission success. The 25th engagement eliminated a figure attempting to establish communication using backup equipment. Maria's shot was taken under extremely challenging lighting conditions that tested every skill she had developed with the old rifle. Enemy forces had essentially ceased organized operations, with surviving personnel focused entirely on individual survival rather than mission objectives. The supply convoy sat completely abandoned, its valuable cargo accessible to friendly forces when tactical conditions permitted. Maria's achievement was extraordinary by any standard. 25 consecutive precision shots under challenging environmental conditions, using equipment that her team had initially considered inadequate for operational requirements. Each engagement had contributed to tactical success that exceeded all mission expectations. The old rifle had performed flawlessly throughout 12 hours of sustained operations, never failing to provide the accuracy and reliability necessary for precision shooting. Maria's tactical adaptation had proven that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective under specific conditions. As she prepared to withdraw from her position, Maria reflected on lessons learned during this remarkable day. Advanced technology had its place in modern warfare, but fundamental marksmanship skills and reliable equipment could achieve results that sophisticated systems couldn't match under certain circumstances. Her success had saved countless civilian lives by preventing enemy supplies from reaching their destination, while also demonstrating tactical principles that would influence future operations. The elimination of 103 targets through 25 precision shots represented one of the most successful sniper operations in military history. The enemy supply convoy sat abandoned and undefended. Its mission completely failed due to one person's tactical adaptation and marksmanship excellence. Maria's achievement with the borrowed rifle had changed the entire strategic situation in their area of operations. Intelligence reports later confirmed that Maria's actions had prevented critical supplies from reaching enemy forces, significantly degrading their operational capabilities and contributing to broader tactical success. Her decision to adapt tactics when standard equipment failed had created victory from what initially appeared to be an impossible situation. The old rifle was carefully cleaned and secured, having proven its value in ways that no one could have predicted. Maria's remarkable achievement would be studied and remembered as an example of how individual excellence and tactical adaptation could change the course of military operations.